This one was, win or lose. We wanted to play our game, just keep it pretty simple, just play our game all night.
Nashville, now the 9th President's Trophy winner in the last 10 years to not win the Stanley Cup. Raleigh natives Chesson Hadley and Webb Simpson are among a 6-way tie for the lead after the first round of the Players' Championship. Dustin Johnson and Matt Kuchar also among the 6 players who shot a 6 under 66. Way too many sixes. Conditions so ideal at TPC Sawgrass in Florida Thursday that the 144-man field combined for 23 eagles and 527 birdies in round 1. 12 players are separated by just one shot, and 68 broke par. Hadley shot an opening round 66 in those favorable conditions, but he said he knows that at least one of the days in the
get myself in a decent position.
After wasting a 4-run lead, the Boston Red Sox rebounded and beat the New York Yankees 5-4 last night. J.D. Martinez led off the 8th inning with a tie-breaking home run just beyond the reach of Aaron Judge at the right field wall, and the Bo Sox avoided a 3-game sweep in dealing the Yankees just their second loss in 19 games. Despite the loss, Bronx Bombers manager Aaron Boone said he's not disappointed at all.
I walk away, again, proud of these guys, frustrated that we didn't push it over the top, but just really pleased with to compete on a wet, rain delay kind of night.
Boston, with the win, moved back into a tie with the Yankees for the AL East lead. They also share MLB's best record on this season at 26-11. This is NCN Sports.
The Powerade State Games of North Carolina are coming this June to the Piedmont Triad. Registration is open for athletes of all ages and skill levels in 24 different sports. The Powerade State Games feature 13,000 athletes and 700 teams. Don't miss out on the largest sports festival of the year. Visit PoweradeStateGames.org today. The Powerade State Games are brought to you by BB&T, Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina, and Lowe's Foods. For more information, visit PoweradeStateGames.org.
Sometimes the simplest things can make the biggest difference. An extra pair of hands, a smile, or a shoulder. At North Carolina Farm Bureau Insurance, we feel the same about home and auto coverage, affordable rates, trusted service, and local agents. After all, making one simple difference in your life helps you make a big difference in another's. Farm Bureau Insurance. Helping you is what we do best.
The Hornets officially named James Borrego as their next head coach. The 40-year-old has got 15 seasons as an NBA assistant. He spent the last 3 with the Spurs under Greg Popovich. Borrego has gained some head coaching experience as well. He served as Orlando's interim head guy for 30 games during the 2014-2015 season after Jacques Vaughn was dismissed. Borrego will be introduced at a news conference today. The Panthers announced that they've signed 5 of their 8 draft picks. Cornerback Dante Jackson, who they picked up in the second round, has been signed, as well as 4th-rounders, tight end Ian Thompson and defensive end Marquise Haynes. Carolina also signed a 5th-round selection, linebacker Jermaine Carter, and defensive tackle Kendrick Norton, who they picked up in the 7th round. The Panthers open up team rookie minicamp today. That'll continue again tomorrow. Josh Zach, NCN Sports.
After yesterday's showers and thunderstorms, weak high pressure has built in, but I still think we might see a shower or a thunderstorm late tomorrow afternoon and into the evening. They won't be all that widespread. Otherwise, mostly sunny with mid-80s to low 90s. Now, maybe an evening shower or thunderstorm, partly to mostly cloudy tonight, the low in the mid-60s. Tomorrow is partly cloudy. It's hot and humid, and with the heat, can't rule out an isolated thunderstorm in the afternoon, the high in the upper 80s to low 90s. I'm Mike Mays in the North Carolina News Network Weather Center.
It looks like the weekend's going to be absolutely nice. Tomorrow we may have a high around 91. Possibility of about a 20% chance for isolated thunderstorms. Sunday, Mother's Day, mostly sunny. Highs around 92 and clear Sunday night. Lows around 68. Now we're going to be warming up Monday 92 and then on Tuesday back down to 85, 81 on Wednesday, 82 next Thursday with some scattered showers developing throughout those days with possibly some passing storms. Maybe not as bad as yesterday's storm, but we may get some. Right now, again, it's 63 degrees. It's 8:30. This is WCAB Rutherfordton. Welcome to the Word of Faith Responds. This series of programs will address the issues concerning the negative news reports. This program is paid for by Word of Faith, and the views expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of the management and staff of WCAB. Now here is Word of Faith Responds.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much again for being with us at Word of Faith Response. This is Mark Morris with Word of Faith Fellowship, and we have been sharing with you about the things that Jesus has done in our lives. And today I have Chris and Lori with us. They joined our church in 2000, and they have been absolute blessings to our church. Chris, that's here with us, is actually one of the ministers in our church. He's also an electrician, but definitely you're going to hear his life and how he's actually a minister first, and even as he's an electrician, he's really ministering while he's doing his work. And Chris has been such a blessing in our church. Chris actually does teach and preach, and when he preaches, I love it because it is so from his heart. And he also is on our praise and worship team, and his wife is with us, Lori. She is also on our praise and worship team. Lori actually teaches in our Christian school, and both of them have such a wonderful testimony to share with you today. It's all about Jesus, and you're going to hear how wonderful Jesus is and how wonderful he has been in their life. So let's go ahead and hear from Chris and Lori.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And Jim, I know everybody says thank you, but we really do give you a heartfelt thank you for giving us an opportunity and the people of our church to be able to share our hearts with you people of Rutherford County and the surrounding people. We're definitely a blessed people, and I just want to share this morning. I am so grateful and thankful for the life of Jesus and what he's given us, myself and Lori. We are definitely a testimony of God's keeping power, God's love, God's mercy. I can tell you I came from a very rural background, actually. Lori and myself both. We were talking on the way here. Our lives are really entwined together, really. We've known each other since way back in grade school. I first knew Lori when she was in 3rd grade. I was in 5th grade. And as a little boy, I can just tell you I always had a heart for God. And again, I'm so grateful just to be able to be here to share with you how Jesus has really touched our lives, my wife and I both. I mean, looking back at the hand of God. As a little boy, I can remember I always had a heart for God. I always wanted to know about God. I always wanted to know what Jesus was all about. And really from a very early age wanted to know about Jesus and wanted to know him personally for myself. And actually found a lady who really wanted the same thing. But as a little boy growing up, there's a scripture that God has given us out of Revelations. It talks about where the dragon stationed himself in front of the woman. It was to take the life of Jesus, but I can tell you right now that as far as my life and seeing the hand of God on my life, and again, you'll have to excuse me, I just know how Jesus has kept me. But as a little boy growing up, started at a very young age, I can tell you, we've been taught here at the Word of Faith, and that there's a will of God for your life and the plan of God, and there's a plan of the devil. And I can tell you the plan of God for my life, the devil wanted to take out from a very early age. When I was a little boy, I was cut from here to here. Hand of God was so on me because that day on top of that hill where that tobacco patch was, and a lot of you folks here know all about that, but my uncle had that day gotten a truck, and nobody said he could take it up there, Mark, and he said, I can take my truck up there. He took his truck up there, and it was for more of the reason than that, Jim. It was because God knew what was going to happen to me. And because that man took that truck up there that day, and God had him there, he was able to get me out of there. Again, I always had a heart for God, but there were things that began to develop in my life. The unclean was a major assignment at my life, and looking at things I didn't need to look at and doing things that I didn't as a young boy growing up, but I always had that heart for God, and that would be there. But I can remember nights of just feeling the hand of God so strong on my life that I would leave my home sometimes as a little boy, and I would get out on the road, and I would walk up and down a gravel road, and I would just cry out for Jesus to have mercy on me and to forgive me for what was going on in my life, and never understanding what was really going on in my life, but just saying, Jesus, please have mercy on me. And so again, my heart was always for God. And then I turned about 10 or 11, and somewhere along those years, I developed, I was actually in elementary school. Of course, I'd met Lori by then. We are high school sweethearts, so to speak. And again, we've known each other for a long, long time. We were talking about it on the way here. But as a little boy, I developed meningitis. And there was another little boy that had previously had meningitis, and he died. And so when I got sick and my family found out I had meningitis, of course, you could obviously tell a young boy had already died. And so when I found out I had meningitis, so the thoughts were, okay, I'm going to die. And this was a hard thing for a little boy. And so at that point in my life, I mean, if I don't know how many people know about meningitis, but you can't stand light, you can't stand noise. People come into a room, it hurts you. I mean, your senses are just so overwhelmed with pain, and you know, they really couldn't do much for me. So my mom and my dad and the doctor, actually, they brought me home because there's really nothing at that time. I can't remember what year that was, but I'm sure they got more they could do for it now than then. But they sent me home, and I was in my room, and I mean, I could not stand anything. My mom and dad could be talking in the other room, and I'd scream in pain to tell them to be quiet because it hurt me to even hear them. My mom could rattle a pan, and I would just be in major pain and couldn't stand anything that was going on. But, and again, I'm sharing this to share with you the keeping power of God and where Jesus was on my life early. I can remember being in that room and in so much pain and just didn't know which way to turn, didn't know what was going to happen to me. And I remember God was enough in my life that there was a night that I was in there, and I just began to cry out, Jesus, if you don't help me, I'm going to die. It felt that way. It felt like there was no, it felt like I wasn't going to go out of my room ever again as a little boy, because after all I knew about meningitis was people died. There wasn't anybody that got over meningitis at the time. And I went through about 2 or 3 days and nights of that, and I was in my room that night, and I remember I had taken everything that I could possibly take. And as a little boy of 11 or 12 years old, in my heart, I just began to say, Jesus, if you don't help me, I'm not going to make it. Please help me. Please help me live. I want to live. And I remember saying, if you'll let me live, I will give my life to you. And that night, there was a presence that came into my room, and it was the presence that, I know it was Jesus. And it was like he came across my bed, and it was just the most unbelievable thing I've ever felt. And I do remember in my heart saying, is this Jesus? And I knew it was Jesus. And as I felt that presence in my room from my crying out, he came to me, which later on I got revelation from when I came to the Word of Faith. You groan, you travail, you cry out to God, and he'll come to your aid. But as a little boy, I was doing that. So he came to me, and he spoke to me that I was going to be okay. And for the first time, I was able to get up out of my bed, and I'll never forget, I ran to the door. And I was able to get to that door, open the door, and I was just standing in the door, and I was calling for my mom, and I said, Mom. She came to the door, and I said, Mom, Jesus just came and visited me. Well, she turned white, her mouth fell open. She thought I was totally delirious, because meningitis made people delirious, Jim. But I said, no, Mom, I'm telling you, Jesus just visited me. He just walked across in my room and told me I was going to be okay, and from that day on, I began to get better. So the hand of God was definitely there. He was showing himself to me at an early age, but there was still a lot of sin in my life. And early on in my life too, I was always, the one thing that really took me off course was I gave my heart to sports in such a way. And the Bible talks about anything you give your heart to more than the love of God, it becomes an idol, it becomes a God in your life. And as a young boy, I turned my heart to that. Of course, where Lori and I grew up, things are so rural. I mean, one of the major things you're told is if you ever want to get out of here, the way to do that is to excel in sports and maybe get a scholarship, move on. So it was just completely all about sports. And so I began to give my heart to that. And, the devil obliged me very much because I really excelled in sports, became well known in sports. We achieved a lot. I was on a little league team in Tennessee. We won the state tournament. We went to Florida. We played in all the national tournaments there, and we actually did well there, actually. And I really did well down there. Was on some radio programs and some different things from down there. And as I came home, it really put a lot of stuff in me. My brother Larry was on here, King, the other day, and he and I grew up a lot the same way. But it put a lot of pride in me, and it began to work on me to put things into me that was not the will of God for my life. And going into sports and that things, I can remember I would go into sports, but to fit in, I had to do things with people that, even as I was doing them, I just knew it wasn't right. I felt like a fish out of water, Jim. In other words, I was having to swim in water that really wasn't where I was supposed to be. And but I kept going, and I did keep excelling, and there was a lot I did excel. And actually, as a sophomore in high school, I had a good friend of mine who was a pitcher, and he could throw the ball really fast. I was a catcher. And we both were excelling, and he actually did go on to play professional baseball right out of high school. But as a sophomore, I had the opportunity. They wanted us both to go together at the same time, but found out I was a sophomore. And so anyway, that just took me even further, built me more into all kinds of things, and the pride, the haughtiness, and I was probably pretty tough to deal with because of everything.
You were.
I was. And so anyway, it was like nothing could stop me, I mean, everything was out in front of me, but that was my ticket. I'd already found my way, and of course, I had this great thinking I'm going to go into baseball and tell everybody about Jesus. But I wasn't doing anything to exonerate Jesus. It was all about Chris Hall. So wanted to tell you this story too, because on my 18th birthday, we were playing a doubleheader, and we were able to, the scout was there and people were there, and at 18 they can talk to you, and things began to really work at that point. And so on that day we were playing a team, and we had a particular play we did, but to make long story short, the guy ended up coming home, and he ended up with his cleats in midair flying at me with steel cleats, and it hit me in the hand, and it broke my thumb all the way out of my glove. And when that happened, the guy actually left, and all interest was dropped, and a lot of things happened. There was a lot of details, but just a long story short, building into that was my life. That was my God. That was what I was doing. I was enthroned in that. It was enthroned in me. That's who I was. Everybody knew me by that. They didn't know me by anything else, which now I want people to know me as a man of God and somebody that loves Jesus and nothing else. But anyway, because of that, a lot of things happened to me. I withdrew. I really just shut totally down because my life was over. It seemed. My dad would even talk to me about, I went from this, I went from that. I went to tool and die. I went to this. I tried everything in the world to try to find a little peace, but turning my heart to Jesus. And but it really, and again, by that time, Lori and I's life were so intertwined. By that time, she was in school with me, and by that time, we were actually dating each other. And so she was there that day, and by the time all that happened and she saw what was going on with me too, we really didn't seek Jesus together. But I turned my heart to a lot of things. I began to drink, which my mom and dad could never believe. I went back to repent to them for a lot of things I did that they never knew about.
This thumb injury you had actually just stopped.
The thumb injury, it did.
You were not able to continue with the baseball career.
I was not.
Did you say the scout that was watching you actually just left?
He left in the middle of the game actually, and I watched him walk out because
you saw your thumb injury.
I broke my thumb in such a way that it's an injury to catchers that you really deliver, totally takes away their ability to catch like they could, and it did. And to this day, I still have trouble with that thumb. Looking back on it, I'm grateful that God allowed that to happen to me, Mark, because I was headed the wrong direction. So some people would look at it in a way and say, "Oh, that's so terrible what happened to you," but I don't see it that way. After God really got to my heart, I know it was the hand of God, and He let that happen to me, because today I'm happier than I ever would. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't married Lori. I wouldn't have the will of God in my life, because again, like I said, that was the plan of the devil for Chris Hall's life. I was born to preach the gospel. I was born to help people. I was born to live my life and give my life to Jesus, not to baseball. And so all that happened, but again, the devastation was we're actually in the car, and some things came out of my mouth that devastated me and somebody with us. It followed me for years until I could repent to God, and it devastated me that I gave myself to something that way. And again, I turned my heart to God to repent for that, but there was nobody there that could tell me how to give my heart to Jesus, to heal the hurts, the wounds, and all the things that had happened in my life up to that point. And literally, I shut down totally. And for people that are listening, the things that happen to you in life, I look back now and I see the plan of the devil was to get me to close my heart off to God. It was to close my heart off to the Spirit of God and become so hard and put something around my heart that I would never be hurt again. I would never feel what I was feeling, that devastation. So I allowed the devil to teach me how to not be devastated anymore. And so by that, he put all his things in my heart to cause my heart to be hard, not to care, not to even, not to be able to do anything. And so for a long time there, that was really working in my life. It was just like there was something around my heart that would keep me from giving my heart to God. You can jump in any time, Lori. I want to give you a chance. Yeah, I'm going to let Lori share a little bit to bring us up to this.
one thing that I've found, and as we were talking this morning, and the keeping power of God in our lives was amazing. I grew up 15 minutes from Chris, yes. And one devastation that I remember looking out the window and my mom and dad saying, "There's a tornado," and they all run, but I'm so little, I'm 4 or 5, they forget me, just trying to get down to the cellar. And I remember they come back, all of that was just exploding around us. And I remember looking towards the door, and my dad was there holding the door, and all you could see was like the dust and just all the glass flying everywhere. And I thought, God, you saved my life that day. And that was really the first time Chris and his dad came to the farm. My family was actually devastated because we lost everything. The only thing that was left standing from that storm was the milk barn, because we had a dairy farm. And just periods of time, I just watched things like that. And at a very young age, I would say 8, I started going to church by myself. And the pastor would come every morning, every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, every Wednesday night. I would be there when the door opened. I'd be there to lock the door. I would clean the church. I was always there. And I just saw there was a hunger in my heart for God. And it didn't matter if no one went with me. I was going to go to church. And I was so grateful for that foundation that was in me as a young girl. And there was a lot of close ties, family-wise with us. My family, my dad inherited 800 acres. We were all a part of that community. Everybody knew each other. And one thing I remember when I started dating Chris, or before I started dating Chris, we lived 30 minutes from high school. And so my mom only trusted Chris to take me to school. We didn't ride the bus. And so if I went to school, he had to take me. And we were just very, very close friends. And then we started dating. And I just remember at an early age, it was a close friendship. It wasn't anything but that at that point. And then he asked me to marry him. We were in high school, and I told him I'm too young. I can't marry. Right now, I can't. And then I just watched. And I was there with Chris when the accident happened with his thumb. And then even later on, he had an opportunity to go to California to play. And I said, well, if you want to marry me, we're not going to California. I'm not moving to California.
Yeah, if I can share there, even at that point, we do receive a lot of persecution for how we believe here, but I can tell you God told me this was my wife, and I believe God told her that I was her husband, and no matter what, that held us through a lot. I did not go to California to play, had the opportunity to go, because I did know in my heart, God said.
Before then.
We had a lot of, going back to talking about, we were talking about, again, even when all that happened, there was a lot of convictions that God already had in our hearts. And so when all that happened with us, she had so many relationships, I had so many relationships. We were so hurt. We knew absolutely everything about each other, and our lives so intertwined with each other. We could tell each other's story. But as we went on through that, as we got into college, she was actually 2 years younger than me. So I went on to college, actually, and I began to play baseball. And I walked on to a place at Tennessee Tech University, which they welcomed me, wanted to know where I was and what had happened to me, and knew a lot of them and played with them, and the coach there knew me and had actually looked at me and some different things too. But even in all that, we just kept going deeper into sin. I mean, the college atmosphere, everything that was going on, and again, to be a part of that, her be a part of what she was a part of, because Lori was an excellent basketball player. We fell into so much sin and was falling so far away from God. We both began to drink. We both began to do a lot of things that we didn't need to do, be involved in things. And to bring you quickly up to where we are here, to how we got here, But there was one night in particular I've got to share with you. God was so on both of us. We were totally drunk and just, it was so bad. But literally, I'm telling you, if you don't believe in demons, demons are real. The devil has demons that he sends after you. And that night, demons from hell really came after Lori and I. And really Lori especially, and they really began to torment her, and it really began to open her eyes. Really, we were scared, but there was a fear of God too. And that night, very strongly, we both looked at each other and had an experience with God of where God literally came to us both at the same time. And it was like if we did this again, we were going to die. The call of God that was so on our life, we knew we were heading the wrong direction. God was going to leave us, and there would be nothing for us ever again. And so that night we decided that was it. I was in college. I was trying to play. My thumb still hurt me. Again, to bring you up, I left all that, but we were still in sin because there was nobody there to tell us about Jesus. There was nobody, but yet we were still crying out to Jesus. We didn't know we could be free from sin, and we found that out when we came to the Word of Faith. In other words, that you could come find repentance, forgiveness, mercy, be washed of that sin, and it be removed out of your life. And we found that here, and God brought us here for that reason, to find it. But we turned our life to God that night, and I started singing in a gospel group. And then singing in that gospel group, we were going around to different places, but the precious man that was the leader of that talked to me and Lori about getting married. So he'd give us a place over at MTSU if we got married. So I went, we did get married, went to MTSU, still going to school, still a lot of things going on in our life, a lot between us both. The strife was really bad because of all the things that were between us. But anyway, there we began to sing with that gospel group, but we found out that we were going to have a child, and we actually lost our first child. So the devastation was there again. See, the plan of the devil was to devastate us. The plan of the God was to establish us, bring us into truth. And there again, the devastation came. The false religion came to tell us all these reasons why we lost the baby that just, really wanted to turn us away from God. Somebody gave Lori a poem about God took your child because he needed another angel in heaven. And I remember we talked about that. Would God do that? And no, God wouldn't do that. He would not do that. And so, anyway, we began to just cry out to God and kept going. And finally, to make a long story short, because we are running out of some time here, we just want to get you to how we got here. We were so crying out to God. And a lady at the church at that time took Lori to a prayer meeting in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and met some precious folks there, and they really helped Lori. She came back, and she was in the room that night just praying and crying out to God, and I saw it for the first time. At first I thought, what is she doing? But then I saw what was going on in her life, the praise and worship she was listening to. She's giving her heart to God and singing and dancing. I knew it was God. Her life was changing, and I watched her begin to get healed. Something was happening in her. So the Spirit of God was drawing us. So as we went on, through that, there was a lot of things that happened. We went into a church. By that point in time, we were in a church with a youth group. That youth group was really growing, and it was really nice. And then the elders of that church voted that the youth group was getting out of hand, and we needed to stop. So again, devastation was there. Were you
involved with the youth ministry?
We were the youth leaders at that church at that time, and the elders stood up and said it was getting too much. They felt like we were getting out of hand because there were youth were coming from all over the place, not even from our church, just to be with us. And so we left from there. We went to another church with some very precious people. They all had a place in our life, but as we went there, we began to come here, and time's running out. But God so moved on so many ways to get us up here. We came to a seminar up here in 91 through the affiliation of this prayer group, and we did eventually begin to go to another church in Murfreesboro, where we went there for 4 years, and then the pastors there resigned, which when they resigned, we knew God spoke to us to come here. But to go back to 91, when we came here, we came here on our own. We weren't affiliated with anybody really. We went to a conference and that's where we first met Jane Whaley. We met Carol Reynolds, and I had met Sam Whaley before that when he had come down for a prayer meeting that we had, and he walked us through groaning, travail, and prayer. And I mean, the Spirit of God drew me so strong. I mean, he laid it out that God will come to your aid if you'll just cry out to him, if you'll groan and travail. Christ is formed in you when you travail. I mean, when hearing those words and seeing it in Scripture, I mean, I ran forward to Jesus, not Sam Whaley. I ran forward for Jesus, and I mean, he wept over me, and I felt the Spirit of God, and from that point on, I mean, God just began to woo us to himself. It wasn't we were coerced to come here. It wasn't that we were sought after to come here by people. God was after us, and God knew the cry of our heart was to find a place that believed like we believed and that could help us with what was going on in our life.
But it's those life experiences that you have, that you walk through, that brings you to Jesus. You can either go to Jesus or you can go to the world, and we didn't want to go to the world.
We did not.
There was no healing, there was no restoration for us at all.
No, we didn't.
It was we wanted God. We had to have God, or our marriage would not have lasted.
That's the truth. And so at that point, we knew that in our hearts. So after that happened, we knew God said for us to come here. And you know, the people talk and they say how people are love bombed or whatever to get here. I tell you right now, the love of God drew us here, and God spoke to Lori and me. Your help is here. You need to go there. And again, we were sharing earlier, we're about out of time, but where we come from, family, you get married, buy a house, get a white picket fence, get your cars and everything, don't move too far from home. So for us to move away from all that, we were really breaking out. And God said, if you'll go, I'll bless you. And I'll teach you my ways. And that's what we wanted to know. And that's really how we ended up getting here. God brought us here. God established us here. God said, if you don't go, that, your life will be a mess. And we came here because there was a call of God on our life. We wanted our children to have the very best opportunity to know Jesus. And I can tell you, this is a very good place. If you want to know Jesus, this is a great place to come to know Jesus, because that's what you're taught from day one. You need to know Jesus for yourself. You need to have the Spirit of God teach you, lead you, guide you. The Spirit of God is the one that's going to control you. And I see we're about out of time here, so I'll hand to Mark.
And thank you so much, Chris and Lori. And they actually have not finished, because after they came here, they both had miracles in their life, and they're going to pick back up on Monday because God actually spared their life from very serious situations, and we're going to actually hear the miracles in their life on Monday. So thank you again for joining us, and this is Word of Faith Responds. You can go to our website. It's wordoffaithfellowship.org. You can actually look at all of our radio programs that we've done now, and we're here Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 8:30 to 9, and we hope that you join us Monday. Thank you very much.
Enjoy the Atlanta Braves and NASCAR here on the Foothills' most sports station, WCAB Rutherfordton.
Variety makes radio listening a pleasure. We have it. News, weather, sports, talk shows, today's country hits, and yesterday's memories. WCAB Rutherfordton.
24/7 WCAB is serving the foothills of the Carolinas.